them in the Hebrew language, saying, Men, brothers, and fathers, hear my defense to you now. Well, when they heard he was addressing them in the Hebrew language, they kept all the more silent, and he said, I'm a Jew. Well, when they heard he was addressing them in the Hebrew language, they said, Well, when they heard he was addressing them in the Hebrew language, they kept all the more silent, and he said, I am a Jew born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but educated in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, instructed according to the strictness of the ancestral law, being zealous for God, just as all of you are this day. And I persecuted this way to the death, binding and handing over to prisons both men and women, as both the high priest and all the assembly of older men can bear me witness. From them I also procured letters to the brothers in Damascus, and I was on my way to bring also those who were there bound to Jerusalem to be punished. As I was journeying and drawing close to Damascus about midday, suddenly out of heaven a great light flashed all around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? I answered, Who are you, Lord? And he said to me, I am Jesus the Nazarene, whom you are persecuting. Now the men that were with me beheld indeed the light, but did not hear the voice of the one speaking to me. At that I said, What shall I do, Lord? The Lord said to me, Rise, go your way to Damascus, and there you will be told about everything it is appointed for you to do. But as I could see, but as I could not see anything for the glory of that light, I arrived in Damascus, being led by the hand of those who were with me. Now Ananias, a certain man reverend according to the law, well reported on by all the Jews dwelling there, came to me and standing by me, he said to me, Saul, brother, have your sight again. And I looked up at him that very hour. He said, The God of our forefathers has chosen you to come to know his will, and to see the righteous one, and to hear the voice of his mouth, because you are to be a witness for him to all men of things you have seen and heard. Now why are you delaying? Rise, get baptized, and wash your sins away by your calling upon his name. But when I had returned, but when I had returned to Jerusalem, was praying in the temple, fell into a trance and saw him saying to me, Hurry up, get out of Jerusalem quickly, because they will not agree to your witness concerning me. And I said, Lord, they themselves well know that I used to imprison and flog in one synagogue after another those believing upon you. When the blood of Stephen, your witness, was being spilled, I myself was also standing by and approving and guarding the outer garments of those doing away with him. Yet he said to me, Get on your way, because I shall send you out to nations far off. Now they kept listening to him down to this word, and they raised their voices, saying, Take such a man away from the earth, where he was not fit to live. Because they were crying out and throwing their outer garments about and tossing dust into the air. The military commander ordered him to be brought into the gut, and because they were crying out and throwing their outer garments about and tossing dust into the air, the military commander ordered him to be brought into the soldiers' quarters and said he should be examined under scourging, that they might know fully for what cause they were shouting against him this way. When they had stretched him out for the whipping, Paul said to the army officer standing there, Is it lawful for you men to scourge a man that is a Roman and uncondemned? Well, when the army officer heard this, he went to the military commander and made report saying, What are you intending to do? Why, this man is a Roman. So the military commander approached and said to him, Tell me, are you a Roman? He said, Yes. The military commander responded, I purchased these rights as a citizen for a large sum of money. Paul said, But I was even born in them. Immediately, therefore, the men that were about to examine him with torture withdrew from him, and the military commander became afraid on ascertaining that he was a Roman and that he had bound him. So the next day, as he desired to know for sure just why he was being accused by the Jews, he let him loose and commanded the chief priests and all the Sanhedrin to assemble. And he brought Paul down and stood him among them. Looking intently at the Sanhedrin, Paul said, Men, brothers, I have behaved before God with a perfectly clear conscience down to this day. At this, the high priest Ananias ordered those striking. At this, the high priest Ananias ordered those standing by him to strike him on the mouth. And Paul said to him, God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. You at one and the same time sit to judge me in accord with the law, and transgressing the law, command me to be struck. Those standing by said, Are you reviling the high priest of God? Paul said, Brothers, I did not know he was high priest, for it is written, You must not speak injuriously of a ruler of your people. Now when Paul took note that the one part was of Sadducees, but the other of Pharisees, he proceeded to cry out in the Sanhedrin, Men, brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees, over the hope of resurrection of the dead. I am being judged because he said this. A dissension arose between the Pharisees and Sadducees, and the multitude was split. For Sadducees say there is neither resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees publicly declared them all. So there broke out a loud screaming, and some of the scribes and party of the Pharisees rose and began contending fiercely, saying, We find nothing wrong in this man, but if a spirit or an angel spoke to him. Now when the dissension grew great, the military commander became afraid that Paul would be pulled to pieces by them, and he commanded the force of soldiers to go down and snatch him from their midst and bring him into the soldiers' quarters. But the following night the Lord stood by him and said, Be of good courage, for as you have been given a thorough witness on the things about me in Jerusalem, so you must also bear witness in Rome. Now when it became day, the Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves with a curse, saying they would neither eat nor drink until they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 men that formed this oath-bound conspiracy. They went to the chief priests and the older men and said, We have solemnly bound ourselves with a curse not to take a bite of food until we have killed Paul. Now therefore, you together with the Sanhedrin make it clear to the military commander why you should bring down. Now therefore, you together with the Sanhedrin make it clear to the military commander why he should bring him down to you, as though you intended to determine more accurately the matters involving him. Before he gets near, we will be ready to do away with him. However, the son of Paul's sister heard her lying in wait, and he came and entered into the soldiers' quarters and reported it to Paul. So Paul called one of the army officers to him and said, Lead this young man off to the military commander, for he has something to report to him. Therefore this man took him and led him to the military commander and said, The prisoner Paul called me to him and requested me to lead this young man to you, as he has something to tell you. The military commander took him by the hand and withdrew and began inquiring privately, What is it you have to report to me? He said, The Jews have agreed to request you to bring Paul down to the Sanhedrin tomorrow, so intending to learn something more accurate about him. Above all things, do not let them persuade you, for more than 40 men of theirs are lying in wait for him. They have bound themselves with a curse, neither to eat nor to drink until they have done away with him, and they are now ready, waiting for the promise from you. Therefore, the military commander let the young man go after ordering him, Do not blab to anyone that you have made these things clear to me. And he summoned a certain two of the army officers and said, Get 200 soldiers ready to march clear to Caesarea, also 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen at the third hour of the night. Also provide beasts of burden that they may have Paul ride and convey him safely to Felix the governor. And he wrote a letter having this form. Claudius Lysias to his excellency, Governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be done away with by them. But I came suddenly with a force of soldiers and rescued him, because I learned he was a Roman. Wishing to ascertain the cause for which they were accusing him, I brought him down into their Sanhedrin. I found him to be accused about questions of their law, but not charged with a single thing deserving of death or bonds. Because the plot that is to be laid against the man has been disclosed to me, I am at once sending them to you, commanding the accusers to speak against him before you. Therefore these soldiers took Paul according to their orders and brought him by night to Antipatris. Next day they permitted the horsemen to go on with him, and they returned to the soldiers' quarters. The horsemen entered into Caesarea and delivered the letters. The horsemen entered into Caesarea and delivered the letters. The horsemen entered into Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, and also presented Paul to him. So he read it and inquired from what province he was, and ascertained that he was from Cilicia. I shall give you a thorough hearing, he said, when your accusers arrive also. And he commanded that he be kept under guard in the praetorian palace of Herod.